Welcome to Phillip Island, Victoria in Australia. What a setting we have for this great sporting contest, the Little Penguin Sea to Dune race. Nervous moments always as they gather on the beach, the tension mounting, and away they go. There's the defending champion, wearing his familiar navy blue and white, great waddling style. Another pre-race favourite though, losing touch with the pack. Maybe that's why. A few too many fish in the day's feeding. There's a familiar face, Skip McIntyre, 8 times a champion back in the 90s, a very successful coach now, keeping a keen eye on proceedings. This the leading group, 1 or 2 still able to put on a show for the camera, others just ploughing straight over it. Some resorting to shortcuts. Sad that cheating has crept into this beautiful sport. The judges will have a look at that. But up at the front, the pace is relentless, closing in on those sand dunes that will offer a bed for the night. The fatigue starting to tell. Who's got the finishing kick up on the outside? What a turn of pace from that one, whichever one it is. No answer from the rest, and he takes victory. What a win. There we are, into the Burrow, building an extension with his winnings, and back tomorrow to try and defend his title here on Phillip Island.
Live Penguin TV. My name's Megan and I'm going to be your host tonight as we watch the world's smallest species of penguin, our little penguins coming out of the water, crossing the beach and making their way back to their burrows here on Phillip Island in Victoria, Australia. And tonight I'm joined by Rach. Do you want to come on in and tell us what you'll be doing tonight, Rach?
Hi guys, I'm Rachel and I will be your monitor tonight. So I'll be monitoring your questions and pass them on to Megan.
Sounds like you're a monitor. You're going to make sure everyone behaves.
Yeah. So on Facebook and YouTube. So if you're interested, yesterday the penguin came home at 6:23 and Sarah guessed really close at 1,026. So I'll give you some time to put in all your guesses, but Sarah was really close. Thanks, Megan.
Great, thanks, Rach. There you go. Put in your guesses. If you watched last night, how many penguins you think came home last night? Sarah is really close. So that gives you a bit of a clue, a bit of an insight into how many there were. And put all your questions in your comments through. And Rachel will do her best to pick out some of the best questions. And we'll try to answer those live on Penguin TV tonight. And I would just like to start by acknowledging that we are watching these beautiful little penguins tonight on the land of the Boonwurrung here on Millau on Phillip Island. The Boonwurrung are the traditional custodians of the land that we are watching on, that Rach and I are on, that I'm lucky enough to live on. So we would just like to acknowledge the Boonwurrung and their elders past, present and emerging. And also acknowledging any traditional custodians of the lands that you all might be watching on from tonight, and any traditional custodians that might be watching as well. And I am looking out to the main stands tonight. We do have Stephen and Kathleen who will be counting the penguins tonight. So you all know Stephen well from our live Penguin TV. So he's going to be counting the penguins tonight, and hopefully if he's not too busy, he might give us a few group numbers. So we'll scroll across Summerlands Beach that we're looking out over tonight. And Summerlands Beach and this entire Summerland Peninsula where our penguin colony is actually managed by Phillip Island Nature Parks, which is who we work for. And we are a non-for-profit conservation organisation, which means that anyone who does come to visit us here at the Penguin Parade when we are able to be open again, or any of our other sites, we do manage over 20% of Phillip Island. If you can go visit the Koala Reserve, Churchill Island Heritage Farm, the Nobby's Antarctic Journey, those tickets go right back into conservation, education and research for protecting our wildlife and our wild places here on Phillip Island, including the entire southern coastline that we're looking out over now. You can see all the way out to Pyramid Rock, Cape Woolamai out there in the distance with the little beacon flashing away, and many of our beautiful wetlands and woodlands, as well as our beaches that you are helping us look after if you are able to visit us. Or pop into the online shop when that's back up and running, and you can also help us out by donating to the Penguin Foundation, and that does help out a lot with our conservation and research work in particular. So although people can't come visit us at the moment, you can help support us if you want to donate to the Penguin Foundation and adopt a penguin or a bandicoot or a shearwater or any of our other wonderful animals that we have here on Phillip Island. And if you are a keen water watcher, one of our long-time viewers, and we have been running for over a year now, our live Penguin TV, which is very exciting, you may have recognised that we have a couple of rafts of penguins on their way in. So these black lines you can see on the surface of the water that are hurriedly moving towards us are groups of penguins. Now, what we're seeing tonight, the penguins coming out of the water and crossing the beach to go back to their burrows, it is the most scary and most dangerous part of their day. So they've been out there fishing, looking for food for days or weeks, and today they've decided they have a nice full belly and they're going to come up onto land. But as much as they are well camouflaged and protected in the ocean, as soon as they come up onto the beach, they are quite conspicuous. They're easy to see for predators, so they're in a bit of danger. And that's why we see them coming in these groups that are so big that we can see them disturbing the surface of the water there. And this one here on the left is getting quite close. And this group is safety in numbers as they cross the beach. So they're a lot safer with a nice big group. That looks like a big group in that raft coming in. And they also have waited till now because it's just dark enough that they feel like those big birds of prey they're scared of crossing the beach are going to go to roost for the night. It's too dark to hunt, so the penguins are safe to come out of the water. And here comes our first group. Let me try and zoom in on them a little bit. And if you want to give Stephen a hand or just test out his penguin counting skills, as these guys cross the beach, you can have your go at doing some penguin counting. Speaking of penguin counting, I think we've left you guys waiting for long enough. Rach, what was the magic number of penguins we had last night?
We've got a winner, exact winner.
Exact winner?
Yeah.
Wow, that doesn't happen very often.
Smith.
Sorry, say it again.
St. Christian Smith guessed 1,020, and that's our
Fantastic.
number yesterday night.
1,020. Well done. I think Rachel's little clue helped quite a bit. Very impressive. And hopefully we get the similar numbers again tonight. Looks like it's been pretty good numbers last night. And a pretty good group here on the edge of the water. Let me zoom in a little bit. But if you are trying to count them, don't start counting them just yet. What Stephen will be doing right now, up at the other end of the beach, looking with his binoculars, he's waiting patiently till they get more than halfway across the beach. Because right now, if these penguins get a fright, they're going to run back into the water where they feel safe. Because they are so nervous crossing the beach, they know they're well camouflaged in the water. So if they feel threatened at all, that's where they're going to run back to, where they know that they're safe. But they don't look like they're doing that just yet. But anything kind of flying overhead does tend to give them a fright. Whether it is a predator or not, quite often a goose will fly down and spoil that first group trying to cross. Oh, and there's another big group coming in behind them. I think I might have to zoom out. Let's see if we can get all these penguins in the frame. It might be a bit difficult. Oh, and they're not gonna, are they gonna wait? No, they're not gonna make it too hard for Stephen. They're not all gonna cross at once. But that looks like a nice big group for our first group. Have we had now an official start, Rach?
Yep, we did.
Beautiful. They're halfway across. That's official start to our penguin count. So for the next 50 minutes, so just under an hour, Stephen will be counting these penguins. Now, right up until after our live stream is finished, he'll be counting these penguins. We do get most of the penguins in that first 20 minutes to half an hour that we get to watch them for. And then after that, there will be some stragglers. There will even be penguins coming in for the next 3 hours. So they're not all as well organised as these little guys. A lot of them are quite well organised tonight. But some of them do tend to run a little bit late. But I like to think that, you know, they have very good eyesight, but they don't have really good night vision. So I like to think they use that last little bit of light to help them find their way home. And the earlier they come in, the most they get to make of their time up here on land, because they're not coming up here to sleep. I don't know where to look. What is going on? There's penguins everywhere. I'm going to try and keep the camera on both so we can see this big group. No, I'm going to go over to the big group crossing, because that is even bigger than our first group, I would say. Do we have a number, Rach?
We do. 194 the first
194 in the first
Yeah,
group.
we've got quite a few guesses.
Whoa. Did anyone get close?
Yeah, 165. It's pretty close.
Pretty good. You guys are going to have to come work for us. Come be penguin counters. We need all the help we can get. No, Stephen in particular is a very good penguin counter. He actually trained me in penguin counting. So I'd like to think that one day I'll be as good at counting the penguins as Stephen is. But to me, this group looks like more. But now I'm second guessing that. But
Yeah, Karen
maybe
was close too.
yeah?
Yeah, 203.
Oh, lots of people getting really close. I'm very impressed.
Yeah.
What was I saying? That's right. They're not coming back here to sleep. So, and then they all go. They're making a break for it. They're past that point of no return. So penguins can sleep out in the water, and here some come on the highway. They can just float on the surface, and they only need to sleep for about 4 minutes at a time. So they just have little penguin power naps, which is actually a whole sleep cycle for a penguin. Quite impressive. I wish I could have a little 4-minute sleep and then feel rejuvenated and ready to keep fishing. But that's the penguin's secret. When they come onto land here, they don't really need to sleep. They definitely don't need to sleep for the whole night. They do spend most of their night socialising, because they don't see each other when they're out at sea, and these guys may have been out there for a couple of weeks. They love to have a bit of a socialise when they do come back up onto land. So we might be seeing a little bit of that tonight, particularly as we are kind of around the start of our penguin breeding season. I know we've been saying that for probably like a month now, but the penguins have been keeping us waiting. Here comes some more on the highway. because we're never really 100% sure when they're going to start their breeding season. It is kind of in a little bit of a time frame that they typically start. So last year they started breeding, I think, around July, which was really, really early. Usually the breeding season starts around August, September, November. So it is really nearing that time where we are starting to see hopefully some breeding happening. We've definitely seen some behaviours that might indicate they're getting ready to breed, like some burrow maintenance. The males in particular will be out collecting nesting material, little pieces of grass and vegetation to bring into their burrows, doing a bit of digging, making those burrows nice and neat and tidy to impress a female, to be their partner for that breeding season. And to further impress them, we might see the males doing a bit of a song and a dance, trying to impress a girlfriend for the breeding season. So there are a few things to keep an eye out for. And a few weeks ago we did see some shell gritters, but I'm not sure if they have ended up being successful in laying their eggs. And if you don't know what a shell gritter is, what is that penguin doing? He's walking so funny. Let me turn around and try and follow that funny looking penguin. A shell gritter is a female penguin getting ready to lay eggs, and they'll be walking the opposite way to all the other penguins tonight. So if you do see one walking the wrong way, let us know in the comments. We get very excited when we see a shell gritter going out to the beach at night to eat little pieces of shell to get extra calcium for the shells of her eggs. So there are some signs that the breeding season might be getting started. So we're waiting patiently for them to start to kick into full gear and hopefully lay some more eggs, so we might have some little chicks in the colony soon. But like I said before, and if you're watching up on the highway, that is a male trying to impress a girl that he has fancied. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit. This camera isn't so good at zooming. Ooh, is she impressed? No, I don't think she's interested, mate. Oh, he's still trying. So that is a penguin courtship dance that you can see. They're flapping their flippers. And if you were out there right next to them, you'd hear a bit of a... You think
really
that what it sounds like, right? That's
penguin.
my best impression. No, I think he's given up. No, she wasn't interested. But I like to call that a bit of a secret rendezvous, because penguins do choose a partner for their breeding season, and they are socially monogamous for the season with that partner. So they will stay in the same burrow with the same partner for a season, but they do cheat on their partners. So if you see some courtship and mating at the burrow, it's probably a penguin pair. Oh, and he's following her, the creep. But if you do see it happening on the highway or on one of their pathways here, it is usually that penguin cheating on their partner. So I'm always a bit sus of penguins trying to get it on the highway. But he wasn't successful. She's probably going to go home to her partner back at her burrow. But it is the males and the females that cheat on their partners. Don't you worry. All right, let me go back to main rocks here. Oh, there's more on the highway. I don't know where to look. Let's go back to the highway actually, and we can see these little guys walking along in front. Some of them are looking very well fed, which is a good sign, because if there is plenty of food, and if food is nice and close, then that's a good indicator that they may have the resources they need to start breeding. Okay, let's go back to the main camera. Definitely we want to see some chunky penguins. That means they're very well fed. And let's zoom out and see if we have any more penguins crossing the beach. And while I look for some more penguins, Rach, do we have any questions?
We do. But before we go to questions,
Oh, yes.
I made a big boo-boo.
Oh.
Tom is actually counting tonight and not Stephen.
Oh.
I don't know how I mixed the voice up. Tom. So Tom was actually the penguin counter.
I was sure I heard Stephen on the radio as well.
I did too.
Oh, okay.
So the second number, if everyone is wondering, we had got 154. That's the second raft that came in.
Oh, wait, was that less than the first raft?
Yeah, it's a little.
I
it's
was
a little
totally
smaller.
wrong. There
Yeah.
we go. I wasn't well trained as penguin counter apparently.
And Kaylee Kimberly was asking, with coastal erosion, does this affect the penguin's ability to navigate around the area?
Yeah, definitely. And that's a great question, Kaylee. And that's something we've been dealing with a lot lately. So let me see if I can actually zoom out. And, ooh, gosh. Oh, there's lots of penguins coming in. Let me just quickly... Whoa. Sorry. I just zoomed right out, which I don't usually zoom out so far. And there is a beach full of penguins. Goodness me. Okay, I'm not going to go look over to the left. Let's watch these guys as they cross. But if you've been watching regularly, you may remember we had a bit of cliffing happening up between the main stands down the beach to the left. And that's been a problem for a long time. I know last year Jordan and I were out there building a rock wall to try and create a little stepping pathway for the penguins to help get up there, because particularly in around May we have a lot of high tides, and those high king tides wash away a lot of the sand. So there is normal movement of sand, so those big tides usually wash the sand out to a sandbank, and then as the tides start to become a little bit normal, a bit lower again, they start to wash that sand back up, and the sand comes back up onto the land. And that's why, you know, sometimes a year you might be looking out over these rocks and you might not see hardly any rocks, but then at the moment you might look out and you'll see a lot of rocks, because there is that movement of sand, which is perfectly natural on a coastal environment like this. But what has happened is, particularly in the early days here on the Summerland Peninsula with early European settlement, a lot of these areas were turned into grazing areas. So the farmers wanted as much land as they could for grazing their livestock. So they didn't want the sand to move. They didn't want the dunes to, you know, wash out and wash back. They just wanted, you know, constant land with grass. So things like marram grass in particular and seaweed grass were introduced into these coastal environments to try and stabilize them and stop those dunes from moving. And they were successful in stopping the dunes from moving, but that actually created a lot of erosion, because these grasses, oh, there goes a wallaby. These grasses have very, very deep roots, and they don't, they hold the sand really tight and don't allow it to move, which means that when the big tides come in to wash away the sand like it normally would and then bring it back in, instead of the sand washing out, the grass holds all that sand really tight until some of it gives way, but it still holds it in a really big cliff. So we get really sheer cliffs rather than this gentle slope that the penguins need to climb up. So if we have a big cliff, there's no way the penguins can climb up to get back to their burrows. So that became a bit of an issue between the stands, and even down to the east, further down the beach where the penguins come in, and in a lot of places around the island as well. So they actually brought in a whole heap of extra sand before those high tides hit, and then a lot of it got washed away, but it's trying to create that sand out there that will then come back up. And something else that's been done is trying to get rid of that marram grass and the seaweed grass that is holding that sand and stopping it from moving around, and introduce things like hairy spinifex. And Jordan and I spent a bit of time out there last year planting some spinifex, trying to establish some out there. And there goes some shellgritters on the highway. And I think this year as well, there's been some redeployed staff who at the moment can't do their regular jobs, but have been out planting some of those plants to try and increase the stability of those dunes, because the native grass, the hairy spinifex, because that marram grass is introduced, it's not good around here, it's not where it's meant to be, but the spinifex, it has shallower roots, and it actually moves around, and it kind of grows more in a slopey kind of way. It's kind of hard to explain without looking at a picture, but you'll notice a beach that's full of marram grass will have a cliff, and the spinifex will kind of be more slopey, which is what the penguins need to climb up. So we're working on putting more sand and putting in some spinifex, getting rid of the marram grass to try and create a more natural dune system that's going to be better in the long term for our little penguins, because they need to access the dunes to climb up from the water up the beach to their burrows to be able to breed and molt. So it's very important we maintain that access. And while that long-term project is undertaken of putting those plants back that are meant to be there, if we need to, the rangers are out there with shovels digging little penguin pathways, which we've been doing quite a bit over the last couple of months. But Andre, our penguin biologist, was able to get an excavator out there, realign some of the sand. It's looking a lot better now for our penguin access. And I think that was like a 20-minute answer to a one-sentence question, but I hope that...
Great one.
I hope that answered. It's actually something I was wanting to talk about for a little while, and it's something that I did a lot of work on again last year up on the east side of the penguin colony, where Jordan and I actually put out some cameras to see how the penguins were going, trying to access some of those eroded pathways. And there was one pathway in particular that we found. The penguins were going out in the morning, and we think what they were doing was they was going to the edge of the cliff and just kind of jumping. And then at night, they would come up and they'd walk up to the same path because they are creatures of habit. They always want to go the same way each time they come home. And they were trying to find a way up, and they were scratching and trying to climb, but they couldn't do it. So they're ending up having to go around and find a different way up, which luckily there was a different way for them to get up, but we were able to then, after doing a bit of that research, putting out some cameras and seeing where they were trying to access, we were able to get that excavator out and dig some penguin pathways while we still try and maintain the normal vegetation structure. So I hope that made sense. It's a little bit difficult to explain when you're not really looking at it, but ideally what we want is that native vegetation all around the island, and that's what provides the ideal habitat for our little penguins, all of our wildlife that we have here on Phillip Island. All right, and such good penguin numbers tonight. I think we're going to have over 1,000 again. It's going to be my guess. Oh, and that looks like one of those little shell critters down there at the... Oh, my head might be in the way. Let me move the camera around. One of the little shell critters there walking out to the beach, getting that extra calcium. So there's a good sign for our breeding season. And some penguins, might start breeding a little bit earlier than the others. Then realise, oh no, maybe that's a bit optimistic. So sometimes at the start of the season, eggs might be abandoned, then they might go back and feed and then lay a second clutch while they're figuring out if the conditions are right. Usually if you have a season where there's a big consensus, like we did last year, and all the penguins just started breeding at the same time, that's usually a really good sign that it's going to be a good season. Whereas kind of in a poorer season, they're not as synchronous in their breeding. It's kind of some optimistic penguins start early, some of them are a bit skeptical and will wait a little bit longer to see what conditions are like. And it's kind of spread out a little bit more. But in a good season, like we had last year, all the penguins just go, oh, yep, great, it's time to breed. So it'll be interesting to see what happens this year. And Rachel, I might grab another question.
Yeah,
I'm sure you have plenty of questions coming through.
Yeah, we've got quite a few. MB Lewis Hogan was asking, why did the fairy penguins get their name changed?
Ooh, so why are they no longer fairy penguins? Well, that's one we get asked a lot, and there's a lot of misconceptions around why that happened. So we now call them little penguins because it is a more scientifically accurate and widely... Oh, goes another shell critter on the highway. Maybe not. A more widely used name for them, because there were a lot of names. So they were called fairy penguins, little penguins, blue penguins, little blue penguins. And their scientific name, Eudyptula minor, actually means good little diver. So it was kind of a scientific decision to have one name for them that was used and have that be the most kind of best descriptor and the most scientifically accurate one. So little penguin, it kind of aligns with their scientific name and what that means, and they are the smallest of all 18 species of penguin, so it is quite fitting. And I do agree that they're not fairies. They're not like a fairy wren is a little delicate fluttering bird. Penguins aren't fairy-like at all. They don't fly. They are how do I say this nicely? That they have a lot of attitude. They're not really friendly and cuddly. You don't want to like, they may look adorable, which they are, but they bite really hard. They have the highest velocity poo of any animal in the world, penguins. So you don't want you don't want to mess with a penguin. They're not magical. They're kind of just tough little birds with a lot of attitude. And I think little penguin is a lot more fitting than fairy penguin. Let me go back to the main camera there. So yes, it wasn't anything political or anything like that. It was just a scientific decision to give them that universal name and call them little penguins. And a challenge to you at home, if you really love penguins, try and learn all the different 18 species of penguin. And I learned them by doing them in alphabetical order. And it's something that my partner Dean had to learn because he had to know stuff about penguins if he was going to be with me. So there you go. If you want to challenge, try and learn all 18 different species of penguin. Do you know all of them, Rach?
No, I don't. There's some I wouldn't have known, but I would do that at home.
There you go. Some homework if you're bored.
That's good.
There is a lot of them, and some of them have really weird names after the places that they live. And they're all mostly in the southern hemisphere. The Galapagos penguins are the only ones that actually forage north of the equator. So you will never find a penguin and a polar bear in the same place in the wild, unless if you're at a zoo. That's a different story. All right, just some penguins waddling along on the highway. We might grab another question, Rach.
Yeah, sounds good. Scott was asking, how many kilometers per hour is a penguin's top speed while swimming?
So a penguin's top speed in the water is about 12.5 kilometers per hour. So that's their top speed. Their cruising speed's kind of around 6 kilometers per hour. So they can go really fast. That's faster than Michael Phelps, faster than our fastest human Olympic swimmers, faster than Ian Thorpe and Grant Hackett. They can go really fast through the water, and they have to be quick to catch their food because they're looking for small. That penguin's full of food. Look at his little belly wobble. Look at you. Oh, you're all dirty as well. I reckon he's so fat that he can't even walk straight the whole way. He's just lied down for a few little rests because he's so chunky and so full of food. Can I zoom out a bit? That's a bit better. So I'm saying they're super agile and fast, but looking at how funny they are on land because they are made to be out at sea. Oh, a bit of a disagreement there. When they come onto land, they look really uncoordinated and a little bit funny because that's not what they're good at. They are good at swimming really fast, diving really deep. We've seen our little penguins diving down as deep as 72 meters to find food, which, remembering they're only about a foot tall, is extremely impressive. Sorry, I'm getting distracted. There's more courtship going on the highway, or attempted courtship. She's into it. I wonder if this is the same male who's been hanging out on the side of the highway. I don't know how close I should zoom in. For any younger people watching, this is some special penguin cuddles. And the parents can decide whether they want to say what that is. So I totally forgot what I was talking about. The penguins clearly have no shame. And this is one of 3 ways you can tell if they're male or female. The one on top is a male, the one on the bottom is a female. The shellgritters we saw were females. And as these penguins walk past nice and close, try and have a good look at their beak. And the ones with the bigger, deeper beaks are usually the males, and the ones with the thinner, straighter beaks are the females. I hear some giggles from Rach. Should I not have zoomed in on that? That's a bit of nature for you all. This is what happens out in a wild penguin colony. It's an indicator of the breeding season. Some little penguin courtship and special penguin cuddles and some shellgritters. It's a good sign for the breeding season to come. And plenty of penguins, because they do spend longer out at sea looking for food. When food's further away, and as food moves closer, they can come in more frequently. So seeing big penguin numbers is a good sign of close food, which is a good sign for the coming breeding season. And I'm not sure how long we've been going, Rach, but I feel like we're running out of time. So maybe
a few more minutes.
Maybe we'll do 1 or 2 more questions.
Sounds good. Stephen Stephen Ranger.
I asked Stephen.
Yeah,
He's like, I'm not counting tonight. What are you talking about?
And he's in the chat. He's saying
Oh, is he?
Oberon, it's getting a little frisky with Dean's leg tonight.
Oh, you can block him if you need to.
And Taylor really, really, really love to know how many penguins chick does a penguin have at a time?
Oh, so a penguin will normally lay 2 eggs at a time and raise 2 chicks. Sometimes something might happen to 1 egg, or 1 egg might not hatch. A couple times I've actually seen a penguin who's laid 2 eggs and 1 egg has been really small. So normally penguin eggs are around the size of a chicken egg, but I've seen some like little half-size penguin eggs, which I'm not sure why that happens, but those eggs aren't going to hatch into a chick. I actually found out recently that a penguin egg weighs about 55 grams, if anyone is interested in knowing that. So they'll usually lay 2, and if both of them hatch, they'll usually raise 2 chicks at a time. And then if there's a good breeding season, like last year when they started really early, they might even have time to have a second clutch, or occasionally even a third clutch, if it is a really, really good breeding season. So they can, potentially have 4 or 6 chicks, but usually they're not going to be that successful. I think our long-term average over all the seasons, because this is a funny looking penguin. What are you doing, mate? I love how they all have their different walks that they have, and this one's is a little bit awkward. So he's going to have a rest. Sorry, I'm getting very distracted tonight. So the long-term average is 1 chick surviving to fledging per pair, because they don't all make it to leaving the burrow, unfortunately. It is really hard for the penguin parents to find enough food to raise 2 chicks. It does take about 14 kilos of fish to raise 1 chick to fledging. So they don't all make it, unfortunately, but the long-term average is 1 chick raised per pair, and I think last year we had an average of 2 chicks raised per pair. So double our usual average, which is really fantastic, because some penguin parents, they might raise 2, some might raise 3, some might raise 4, some might raise 1, and some might raise none, especially if you're a first-time penguin parent. It can be a little bit tricky figuring out how it all works. So we tend to see that the older penguins who are a bit more experienced tend to be a little bit more successful. And, maybe even potentially if they found a good partner and they're working together season after season, because they will tend to stay together if they're doing well with their partner to raise chicks. And then maybe they've gotten rid of the dead weight and, gotten a divorce with someone who's maybe not such a good partner. So those older penguins, they do kind of tend to get a little bit better with age and knowing what they're doing and providing and raising chicks. All right, let me go back to the main camera and see what's going on. And I think we'll maybe answer one more question, Rach.
Awesome.
If I haven't used all the questions, have I? I thought we'd try and get through a few tonight.
Yeah, that sounds good. We've got a 10-year-old Chloe. 10-year-old Chloe was asking, how old does a penguin get?
Great question, Chloe. Since I was just talking about old penguins, so the oldest penguin we've ever had here on Phillip Island that we've seen was almost 26 years old. So it was 25 years and 8 months old, which is pretty old. If you're 10, that's twice as old, more than twice as old as you, Chloe. So they can get quite old. And there's 3 little shell critters going down to the beach. But the average age for a penguin is about 7 years old, because it is quite difficult when you're a young penguin trying to figure out how to find food and how to be a good penguin, pretty much, how to be a good provider. So it's once they get past those first few difficult years that they tend to live into their teens. Getting into your teenage years is a good age for a penguin, but 26 is the most impressive and oldest penguin we've had. And I think it was a she kept breeding right up until we last saw her. So definitely once they know what they're doing, they'll keep breeding, raising plenty of chicks. And if you think maybe if she was doing really well, she might have raised 1 chick every year from when she was about 2 years old. So she's potentially raised 25 chicks, maybe even more. which is pretty good innings for a penguin. And there goes more shell gritters on the highway. I think this is a good sign, Rach.
It is.
Lots of shell gritters. I'm really happy to be able to see some going all the way down to the beach. And you can see them picking at the beach. They're looking for anything white. I'll go back to this one here. Any little pieces of shell. Sometimes they'll even eat stones to get that extra calcium to build the shell of their egg. And something we've actually seen is when they lay the egg, if they still have some undigested kind of shell grit in their bellies, they actually will regurgitate it. They don't need it anymore, so there's no point trying to digest it. So something I've actually seen in doing penguin research is checking burrows, and if we see a little pile of shells out the front, we're usually pretty confident that there is going to be some eggs in that burrow. Oh, and there goes our little shell gritter. Oh, look at that penguin flapping about. Oh, I'm really loving all their different little walks tonight. Watching them on the penguin highway here. Alrighty, so I think I'm glad we've gotten through a lot of questions, and if you have some burning questions that we haven't gotten to tonight, because I know we can't get to all of them, I did want to say that our website is a great resource for anyone wanting to learn a bit more about penguins, bandicoots, shearwaters. We have information about lots of different wildlife here on Phillip Island. Head on to www.penguins.org.au, and if you actually search the nature notes, our nature notes have lots of information about our different wildlife species. I would recommend checking those out if you do want to learn a little bit more. We only have 30 minutes roughly, unless you're Jordan, a night to kind of tell you guys everything we can about these little penguins. So if you want to learn more, hop onto our website, but we will keep answering those questions and trying to tell you as much as we can each and every night. So I do want to thank everyone so much for tuning in. If you do want to help us out here at Phillip Island Nature Parks while we can't have visitors, you can help out by donating to the Penguin Foundation, and that does go right back into our conservation research and education work here on Phillip Island on Milau. And we hope that you will tune in again tomorrow night and the night after while we're still running our live Penguin TV. Let us know how many penguins you thought or you think are going to be coming in tonight, because Tom, not Stephen, is still counting the penguins. If you want to know how many there were tonight, again, tune in again tomorrow night. I think with that, we'll say goodbye. Do you want to come in and we'll say goodbye, Rach?
Yeah, I do.
All right, bye everybody.
Bye guys.